wonderful people all over this country. She is a beautiful
Guyana will become the next Dubai, and we, the citizens of Guyana, are super excited to benefit from our homeland the same way the citizens of Dubai benefit from theirs.
This is what life is like for citizens from the Emirate of Dubai. When you are born, your parents pay nothing. Your delivery and checkups for the next 9 months are all free. Then you grow up and you go to school. Local school in Dubai is free! And so are universities, because Dubai will pay for you to get a degree.
I studied at Zayed University and New York University, both for free.
Who's gonna pay for that?
The government.
Then you get married. If you can't afford the wedding, you get $20,000 to throw a wedding. And after marriage, every local Dubai family gets this: free land. Did you get free land?
Yes.
Did you get free land?
Yes.
Did you get free land?
Sure, yes.
And if you cannot afford the home, then you get a grant to build it for free.
I also can't afford building a house. I can get a 0 interest loan on housing.
Zero?
0.
If you need to go to the hospitals are free. And if you need surgery that's not available here, they will fly you to another country to get treatment for free. When you become a senior citizen, you get discounts, many discounts. And if you live alone and can't afford it, Dubai will even send a caretaker to look after you for free. And when you die, well, in Dubai, that's also free. Your funeral will be taken care of, and Dubai will build a full tent with air conditioning within 5 hours of your death next to your home, so your friends can come and say goodbye to you.
Guyana will become the next Dubai.
with wonderful people all over this country. She is a beautiful Guyana.
Good night, viewers. Welcome to another one of our program here at Globespan 24x7, The People's Voice. Hi, for tonight, I will be your moderator. My name is Neermala Ramsaywack. Before we begin, I would like to welcome Mr. Timothy Jonas, and our second guest, Tracey, will be joining us shortly. If anyone have any question, I would like to add. If anyone have any questions, feel free to post those questions in the comment or send us a message, and we will answer those questions during the program. So for tonight, we will be discussing the issue in the. Sorry, we will be discussing the. Oh my God, sorry. My apologies, guys. So the High Court Judge, Justice Samuel Kissoon, ordered the EPA to issue an enforcement notice to Esso Exploration and its parent company, ExxonMobil, to ensure it provides unlimited insurance coverage to safeguard Guyana against the devastating effects of oil spill. However, the government of Guyana had announced that it will be challenging the decision of Judge Kissoon, and now the EPA has filed a notice of appeal against the High Court ruling. Mr. Jonas, I would like to ask you, sorry, before we go into that, we'll take a look at the video and then questions will be asked.
Be challenging the decision of High Court Judge Samuel Kissoon, who on Wednesday ordered the Environmental Protection Agency to issue an enforcement notice to Esso Exploration and Production Company and its parent company ExxonMobil to ensure it provides unlimited insurance to safeguard Guyana against the devastating effects of an oil spill. The judge in his ruling declared that the Environmental Protection Agency breached its statutory duty by failing to enforce compliance by the oil company of its financial assurance obligations to provide an unlimited parent company guarantee agreement and or affiliate company guarantee agreement to indemnify and keep indemnify the EPA and the government against all environmental obligations of the permit holder and co-venturers within the Stabroek Block offshore Guyana. Justice Kissoon also said ExxonMobil engaged in a disingenuous attempt to dilute its obligations under its environmental permit for Liza 1, the project that saw Guyana's oil production in 2019. In a statement today, Attorney General Anu Nandlal said the government is not in agreement with that ruling and will be approaching the Court of Appeal for its pronouncement on the matter. The Attorney General said the EPA and the government of Guyana are of the considered view that the environmental permit imposes no obligation on the permit holder to provide an unlimited parent company guarantee agreement. In this regard, he said, the government holds the view that the learned judge fell into error in his findings. The Attorney General also said the ruling could have profound ramifications and grave economic and other impacts on the public interest and national development. As a result, he said the decision of the judge will be appealed. According to Mr. Nandlal, the Environmental Protection Agency and the oil company spent almost a year negotiating a parent guarantee and indemnify agreement to the tune of $2 billion in liability coverage in compliance with the oil company's financial assurance obligations under the Environmental Permit and the Environmental Protection Act. The negotiations, the Attorney General said, concluded just last week. Though those negotiations and their material details were placed before the court for its consideration, they were all rejected by Justice Kissoon.
So, Mr. Jonas, I've been noticing since that report was released, a lot of persons have been agreeing with Justice Samuel Kissoon's decision. What are your thoughts and views on that?
That's a big question. Thanks for having me, Ms. Ramsaywack. I noticed the new title for your program, The People's Voice. That's also a big undertaking, but okay, I'll go with it for now and see where it goes. I had a look at the process that took place before Justice Kissoon, and I think it needs a bigger discussion than Mr. Mosley gave or probably could give, in fairness to him. Here's the thing. If any of us asks ourselves, what do we know about the performance of the contract between Exxon and the government of Guyana and about the compliance with the various requirements that the Environmental Protection Agency imposed under its permit? None of us knows anything. And that in itself is a danger, because what it means is that there's no transparency and no scrutiny available to us, the average Guyanese, to see what's going on. Although, as anybody who thinks about it must realize, is your average Guyanese who will be harmed irreparably if there's a problem. If you've got an oil spill out there, if you've got some kind of catastrophe out there, and we see thousands of gallons of oil floating around on our sea, outside our seawall, I can't do anything about it. Our Coast Guard with their couple boats can't do anything about it. It's a bigger problem than Guyana. So it needed for an arrangement that if there's a disaster, if there's a spill, Exxon got to do something about it. We can't do anything about it. So that was the first step. But then you had to ask, so what does the agreement provide? And are you honoring it? And this is where I had a problem with the approach that was taken by the EPA and by Exxon. Because the EPA's job is to look after us. They're supposed to protect us. They are created by Parliament to safeguard Guyanese and make sure that activities by investors, by large companies, result in environmentally sound and safe practices for our protection. And when two citizens of Guyana went to court to say, look, we don't believe that there is adequate insurance as is required under the EPA permit to safeguard us, the EPA should have come to court and said, here's the arrangement. This is what we require. This is what ExxonMobil gave to us, and we are doing our job. And they should have said to the good judge, here's all the information. Please agree with us. We're doing our job properly. And if we're not doing our job according to law, please tell us where to go right. Tell us where we're going wrong and tell us how to fix it. That is what you expect from any statutory authority that has goodwill, good faith, and wants to do its job properly and in accordance with the law. Full disclosure to the court, here are all the cards on the table. Please tell us we're doing the right thing, because we genuinely believe we're doing our best. Not the EPA, no. What the EPA did is said, we are relying on a technicality that when somebody takes us to court, they got to prove their case. So it is for these two citizens who brought us to court to prove what they are alleging, namely that there's insufficient insurance coverage by Exxon. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that approach to the court in itself was less than honest and did not reflect the interests of the Guyanese people. It's not for the statutory authority to hide. As soon as they start hiding, I got a problem and an alarm bell should go off. So EPA came with this technicality. You allege that something's wrong, you got to prove it. But how can we prove it? How can a Guyanese citizen prove what the insurance coverage is that Exxon provided to EPA? That's between Exxon and EPA. Is the insurance being paid? Does the insurer have the wherewithal to deal with a disaster situation? Those are things the EPA should be dealing with. I don't know the answer. So it is not acceptable for the EPA to simply come to court and say, I don't have to tell you any of this because you have to prove it. You have to prove I'm not doing my job. And I think that's why Justice Kissoon landed as hard as he did. Because he correctly, in my view, said, if you are entrusted with a statutory responsibility to look after the safety of Guyana by ensuring that the permits are adhered to, that there is insurance coverage, that we will be safe. And when somebody says you're not doing it, your answer is not to come to show me the facts, but to come to say, I don't have to show you anything. Well, that's a problem. You're already abdicating your responsibility. And therefore, he decided as he decided. So, in that regard, the EPA and its officials should be ashamed of themselves. The second problem I had with the entire scenario is that I don't see that the government of Guyana should pretend to be an interested party. If Exxon has obligations for insurance to protect us, and EPA has an obligation to monitor and make sure that Exxon is taking the right steps for our protection, isn't that a good thing? And if there are legal underpinnings for a court, only a court could decide legally right, legally wrong. So the parties go to court and the court says, this is legally right and this is legally wrong and this is what has to be done. Isn't that a good thing for all of us? So if EPA disagrees, EPA can appeal. If Exxon disagrees, Exxon can appeal. Why is the government getting involved in this? Why is this political? What is the ulterior motive that we are not seeing? And I have a problem with that. So I am disappointed at the approach taken by the EPA in refusing to give information to the court, which is the supervisory body that looks after all of us to ensure that what is being done lawfully. And I'm disappointed by the involvement of the government taking a side when it should be happy, as all of us should be happy, that the legal process is working, and that between the EPA and these two individuals, these two citizens, who brought the case saying that there's insufficient coverage and they're worried, the court system is doing its job.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Mr. Jonas. So for our next topic, before we go ahead, viewers, if you have any questions, please feel free to pose the questions, comment, or WhatsApp us. So I want to go into our next topic where we will be discussing what is happening under the Ministry of Housing. Now I've been noticing that there has been a lot of developments happening, roads being built, houses being constructed, and lands are being distributed. We have a few houses. I'll ask Devin to play those videos. So we have a few of these houses up. We have some of the houses listed as at 5.5 million. I believe another for 19, one for 7.5, and one at 14 million, and another at 9 million. Now these are homes that are being constructed for persons who can afford. Now, we have these homes. I see there were a few new homes that was constructed, that is being constructed, sorry, recently, that a lot of people made some comments about, and they've been saying those homes aren't worth like $5 to $5.5 million. Would you like to share your views on the housing projects in Guyana?
I've always said that the housing projects that have been initiated under the PPP governments, and this is since back in 1996 coming forward, have been the best success story of the government over the past 20 years. I still believe that. I might be betraying my age, but when I was a young lawyer, the ECHL scheme was the scheme that had been commenced, and a lot of construction was going on there. But since then, there have been schemes in Diamond, in Horstelling, over the river, in Grove, up the coast in Enterprise. I mean, the government's housing drive has really been a success, and it has transformed the Guyanese economy by removing Guyanese as tenants and making Guyanese landowners. That's really important. As a landowner, the property owner, you already have a value. You suddenly have real material worth. So that even if you have a humble house, your house is worth a couple $1 million, and that is an equity that you can borrow money from the bank to start a business. It is something you have to protect. It is something you can pass down to your children. It has really been a success story by the PPP government over the years, and they are to be congratulated on it. It could have been done better, but anything could have been done better. The drainage, the road structure, the quality of the houses now being built are all questionable. And originally it had started with just an allocation of land. I think that's a preferable approach because it allows each homeowner, each landowner, each person who is given land to decide the kind of house he wants and how he wants to put up that house. Now, the problem with centralizing this expenditure, and APNU had started it when they started their aborted effort to create condominiums that never got off the ground 6 years ago, is that if the government undertakes the responsibility to to pay for the construction, you have yet another situation where the government is controlling the purse strings. And that's problematic. It leads to corruption, it leads to favoritism, and it leads to cronyism. That kind of thing needs to be decentralized. So I don't like the approach where the government is undertaking the construction. It leads to shoddy work, as we are seeing. It leads to questions as to whether you're getting value for money. So although I would like to give the government credit for its housing drive, I think that this new development where they are trying to use, they're flush with money. They got plenty of money. Oil money has changed their approach, but they're using this money that they're flush with to go further and actually do the construction. I think it's a bad idea. One of the shortfalls we had before is that there was no real standardization in quality of construction. So you would have ramshackle houses going up, poorly constructed, falling down, and then right next to them you'd have mansions. You'd have a store next to a manufacturing place, next to a place that somebody keeping horses or got a butcher shop. It's important for us to, at this stage, and this is the time to do it with the amount of construction going on, to demarcate very clearly what are residential areas, what are business areas, and to be strict in terms of building permission. A serious flaw that has taken place is, as part of the government's reluctance to delegate to others, to allow other people to have control, is that the NDCs haven't been permitted to charge rates for these new houses that are going up. So in Grove, in Eccles, in Diamond, in all of those new schemes where you got hundreds of houses going up, the NDCs have not been able to assess and properly charge rates on those houses, which would allow the NDCs to deal with issues like road building, bridge building, building drains, paying for garbage disposal. The kinds of things that every citizen should take for granted. And that needs to be done as well. So it's one thing to say, okay, here's a housing scheme that is successful. But I think it's time for us now, especially with the rapid pace of construction that's going on, to start thinking about the services that the NDC should be offering and empowering the NDCs to offer those services by allowing them to charge rates on the houses. If you own a house and your house is worth $10 million, you should be paying a couple $1,000s well every year for rates so that those ordinary issues are dealt with in your community, such as maintaining the parapets, cutting the grass, maintaining the drains, maintaining the roads, carrying away your garbage, and making sure that your neighbor's house is built lawfully and he doesn't build right next to the fence so as to crowd you in unlawfully. There are a lot of things that need to be done so that we can enjoy the newfound wealth that we have and enjoy life in Guyana. And it's not being done. It can be done better.
Okay, Mr. Jonas, thank you. Now I've been noticing some issues with few squatters that is currently squatting on lands that are currently being developed by the Ministry of Housing that would be used to distribute and homes. Now, I recently came across a few comments where people would usually go on the page whenever an update is posted, the ministry page, whenever an update is posted, and make comments saying that, oh, they paid for their lands, how long ago, and then it has been occupied by squatters. Now, there was a recent meeting, a success on the East Coast, where the Minister of Housing addressed a few squatters that needs to be removed. Now, they were offered a few options where they would be able to choose a house which would cost, a 3-bedroom house which would cost like $9 million, a low-income land. The believe it's at Globespan. I'm not sure how far, which would cost $150,000, and there's a middle-income land that would be at the back in Success, which would cost $1.1 million. Now, I've been to the meeting, so I see a lot of persons agree to take up the offers, while some didn't agree. Now, I've also observed at the meeting that many of those persons never applied for a house lot, and there were like about two persons that applied, and this is like years ago and still waiting. Now, the thing is, are saying all over on social media that um, squatters are just coming about the place, squatting on a piece of land, and whenever the government needs it, they would then help them and allocate them a house and land. And whoever had applied years ago is then being given the house that they applied for. Now, do you think that is fair for persons who applied for years ago and have already paid for their lots and is waiting?
Well, let me ask you, because that's a topic that's got a lot of elements to it. And I'd like to break it down. And if you don't mind, I'm going to turn the tables on you and ask you for your view. What do you think? You mentioned squatting and success. What do you think allowed that situation to develop where there was quite extensive squatting going on in success? Why did that happen?
not just in success across Guyana.
No, but you mentioned.
But I believe, yes. But I believe it is because simply because people wait. Well, first of all, let me explain this, right? I've been noticing a lot happening around me, and people being offered help, right? And they refuse. Now, when I say help to get a house lot, go through the system, get a house lot and whatever, so that they can move out and live in a better condition than what they're in, and they refuse it. Now, I did a little bit of investigation. I did a little bit of investigation and found that because some of these people are being able to get access to free water, free light, and conduct certain businesses, they don't want to move from where they're at because nobody in there from mind the business. I just really mind people business. I know, right? So that's the one, right? And then there is two, whereby I believe, okay, so we had this lady that said she applied how many years ago, and now she's getting a chance to get her own place because she's squat. So people saying now that, okay, this best they go squat instead of going and applying, they can get a land faster than going through the normal system, and you gotta wait years. So that's two things to me. That's it. But I mean, when the squatters were offered to take up, I mean, like 150,000 Guyana for a piece of land, it's not bad. I think it's 50 by 100 the land size is. So it's not bad. But people saying, okay, I got a video I will ask Devin to play after this. That because the land is located in Lusitana, and they believe that it's close to the prison and people shouldn't be around the prison. But I recall Camp Street is in Georgetown and people live in around Camp Street, so I don't think they see with it. But that's just my views. So let me ask Evan to play that video, and then I'll hand over back to you.
I hear you.
On the second 1/5 land will you give me? First of all, I want to ask the minister, which part in the world people, the government, the spot, people to live behind a freaking jail? That's why I want to ask the minister. Jail land don't be community, it's be farmland and them things. That house is worth $9 million you giving people? You talking about this one people and one nation, this developing Guyana? One with all that money where they get them for infrastructure. One with all that money though. Squatting illegal, which part in parliament the pass? Squatting illegal? Squatting can't illegal when you born and go in Guyana. The migrants I'm coming and buy it and come and squat and get in it. So who's we? Exactly. I born as a born Guyanese. Squatting can't illegal vote for me because no part in parliament that never passed. Exactly. Stripping is really telling me.
Yeah, you're muted, Mr. Ramsaywack. You're muted. I'm sorry, we're not hearing you. You're muted.
My apologies. My apologies. Yeah, so that interview was conducted last Saturday. I'm not sure who did it, but I saw it circulating on TikTok and I recognized the person, so I know it was recent. What are your views on that?
Well, first of all, I laugh that you call that an interview. I'm glad I'm not the interviewer. Because
I
that was a bit more vitriolic than an interview.
the people was being interviewed, so I that's the comment she gave. So,
But let's deal with what she said. First of all, she doesn't like the location. Well, okay, that's up to her. There's a hard reality. If you're rich, you go and live in Pradoville. And if you're lucky, you do like some of the ministers did, and you get a nice free piece of land in Pradoville because they're the ministers and they gave themselves the best land back in the day. Part of the corruption in the whole process. But if you're poor, you don't get to choose. And that's a hard reality. It's just how it is. The reason people squat in Guyana is because they can. Nobody has ever done anything to stop it. And that's another hard reality that has to be faced. Squatting is not a desirable situation. If you develop a community, think about the kind of community you want. You want a nice recreational area in the middle. So maybe with a football field, maybe a swimming pool, a little place where you can go and have a sit down, like a national park, but a small one. So trees and something pretty. You want a supermarket. You want a pharmacy where you can buy your drugs. You want maybe a little doctor's office, a little accounting office, some kind of little mall. And then you want residences around that. That's what you want in a community. You don't get any of it in a squatting area. In a squatting area, what you get is a series of ramshackle, small, dilapidated, falling down places with no drains, with no roads, with no proper organization. And we saw that when we saw Sophia being developed. Sophia was a huge area that used to be a cane field and became a problem too big for anybody to deal with until fortunately it was regularized and roads were put in and some people were moved. But it was a disaster for a long period of time. Let me tell you another problem which you mentioned, which is another aspect of squatting that people have to think about. GPL buys heavy fuel to run its generators, to give people electricity, and people should pay electricity bills so that GPL can pay for the fuel to maintain itself and run electricity. There was a period of time GPL couldn't go in Sophia. Because if GPL went into Sophia, they used to get chased out. And there are places up to now GPL can't go in, where people steal electricity. Because it's a squatting area, because there's no easy access by vehicle, because it has all the problems we were talking about, and electricity is stolen. And GPL loses nearly 50% of its generated power to theft of electricity. So squatting is not just a situation where you say, I should get a free piece of land. Squatting is a situation where if you don't do it properly, there will be no drainage, there will be no sewage facilities, so people will get sick. There will be no schools nearby, so your children can't go to school. You will have a situation develop that nobody wants to live in. You have a ready-made slum. So not only is squatting illegal, and it is, despite what that lady says, but it leads to social unrest, social problems. You have high incidence of crime. You have high incidence of theft of electricity. People not getting water, so they start breaking the pipes the Guyana has nearby, you have a calamity waiting to happen. And the reason it develops is that the government has been very poor in monitoring it. But again, how does squatting happen in Escala area? Success. The reason squatting can happen in Success or in Horstellin or in Sophia when it started 20 years, 30 years ago is because the NDCs do not have any power. The government has not allowed the NDCs to have power. And a single government sitting in Georgetown does not have the capacity to play policeman in Victoria, in Beirut, in Lusignan, in Success. That is what the NDCs are for. The NDCs must be looking after their own neighborhoods. But the government isn't empowering them to do it. And that is why people can go and squat knowing that there's no regulatory body coming to bother them. And as the squatting gets worse, you have those problems. Crime, drainage, theft of electricity, damage to utilities, and all the associated problems with a slum being developed. That's not what we want for Guyana. It's not what we want for Guyanese. There has to be a better way. And the better way is land allocation on a generous basis. Land is something we got plenty in Guyana. Kaisuka is no longer operating and they got cane fields all over the place. But in a regulated way, where you build the roads, you build the drains, you put in your community recreational area, you allocate an area for shops, and you put your residents around it, and you have a location for schools. You do it in a holistic, planned way so that you don't end up with the kind of horror stories that we see around the place.
Thank you for that response, Mr. Jonas. Now, Devin has a comment from a viewer. I'll hand over to Devin, and then I have another question I want to ask after that. Devin?
Hi, good evening. So we have a question from Mr. Deodat Suku from Facebook. He's asking, Mr. Jonas, the people of the quarantine ran the PPPC out in 2015. Is it swing voters you're interested in winning in the quarantine because you were chosen? Would you care to respond?
I'm sorry, Devin, what was the name of the gentleman?
Mr. Deodat Suku.
Mr. Suku, first of all, thank you for your courage in naming yourself and identifying yourself and in asking a question. Your question shows, first of all, that you're independent, and I am grateful for that. Now, I'm not here as a politician. I'm just here to give some ideas and hopefully to present some solutions by helping us to discuss where the source of the problems lie. So your question is political, and this is my answer. We have people in this country named Suku, and we have people in this country named Jonas. And both of them are good people. And yet 90% of them vote along ethnic lines every 5 years. So I have been asking myself for my entire adult life, why is it that we have an Indo-centric party and an Afrocentric party, and we have blind loyalty from Indo-centric voters and Afrocentric voters while the whole country is crumbling around us? We're talking about squatting, we're talking about drains, we're talking about theft of electricity, we're talking about the NDCs being disempowered, we're talking about roads falling apart. The whole country has gone to crap, while we vote blindly along ethnic lines. And I came to the conclusion, maybe 10 years ago, that the solution for me personally has to be, I will no longer vote for an ethnic party. So I'm not voting for my ethnic party and I'm not voting for the other ethnic party, because ethnopolitics is what is harming Guyana. And if we reject any party that represents an ethnicity, at long last, we could vote for parties who have economic policies, social policies, education policies, who have plans to make the country better. So if you're asking about swing votes, what I'm hoping isn't for someone to stop voting for that party and start voting for this party. I'm hoping to persuade Guyanese that neither party is good for Guyana. Neither party. If you have a party called Liberty, and then you have another party called Happiness, and that's all you know about those parties, you're not going to look to see what the people look like when you're voting for them. You're going to ask them what their economic policy is, what their schooling they're providing for your children, what kind of health they're getting. If you're retired, you're going to ask how well they're treating you as a pensioner. Every month, you see pensioners lining up at post office. We treat our old people in a way that embarrasses me every month. Not because we are callous or hard or unkind people, but because we are so incompetent and rotten after 50 years of blind ethnic voting. So I don't want to talk about swing voters. I want to say reject ethnopolitics by deciding to reject both ethnic parties. So if your name is Griffith, I'll tell you the same thing as if your name is Singh. If a party can be identified ethnically, it is harmful for Guyana. And that's my view. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you for sharing your views, Mr. Jonas. Now, viewers, I want to remind you, if you guys have any questions in relation to the topics that we and the discussion that we're having tonight, do feel free to post in the
Mr.
comments.
Ramsaywack, sorry, you're not hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, a bit better.
Okay.
You just went mute though.
A plane just passed over, so sorry. Yes. I was saying, to the viewers, if you guys have any question in relation to the discussion that we're having tonight, do feel free to post your question in the comments or send us a message. Now, Mr. Jonas, before we go into our next discussion, I would like to ask one more thing. And a lot of people, I'm sure a lot of people are interested in this. So I've noticed that okay, so there are squatters, right, that have been living. I hear what you said. People are squatting because nothing is being done, right? Now there are people that have been living squatting for like 40 years on a piece of land. It's either the grandparent, the mother, father, or great grandfather pass on the land to them. They squat and they pass it down to them. Now these people are squatters, right? Squatting on the land for 40 years and so. Now, the government, right? The Ministry of Housing, I noticed in issue where the Ministry of Housing needed, and this is in relation to the issue of Moko, right? They needed this reserve to build a road where these squatters were living. Now, to my understanding, okay, squatting is illegal and these people have been squatting on this piece of land. I noticed that some of these people, they had structures, they built whatever and so on. Some of these people were compensated and they were allocated a land free of cost, just because the ministry wanted them to move, right, to get the land to do whatever you need to do. Now, based on what I gathered, before the compensation is passed over to these individuals, an evaluation is done, and based on that, they compensate you. Now, some persons were satisfied with it, and some persons weren't satisfied with it. Some persons took the compensation money and moved, while some didn't. Now, I mean, these people have been squatting illegally on the land, the government land, right? What are your views on that, with the government coming to compensate them to move out from that land that they've been squatting on?
What solution do you see? Again, I'm throwing the ball back at you. You see, we look at things in the context of Guyana, and we have knee-jerk reactions. But look outside of Guyana and tell me what you would like to see as a system in Guyana that should work for everybody.
I mean, in my view, I believe everybody should be treated equally, right? Look, you can't want to come and say, all right, you gonna get this for free and you got, yeah, other people got to pay for it. It's not fair. In my view, that's not fair. So that is why I'm asking for some comments on that, because it's not just I'm curious. It's not just I curious about the issue. I see a lot of people commenting and saying, "Oh, them is supposed to be throwing these people out that refuse to take the compensation, and oh, they're supposed to get better compensation, or you know, these kind of things." But then again, another set of people are being made to okay, they squat and they are being offered these turnkey houses. These people don't have a choice. They got to take it and they got to pay for it. I read an article a few weeks ago where these persons were squatting somewhere at Annadale. I'm not sure. I believe it was on the Sea Dam or something like that. And they were removed from there and they were given these turnkey homes. And one of the women said, well, she is a domestic worker. She don't normally get everyday work. So she was a bit concerned on how she would go about finding the money to pay for these homes. And I believe it was 24,000. It's 24,000 a month she got to pay. And this is a 2-bedroom, 5.5 million $1 homes. So in my view, I honestly feel that it's not fair. I mean, everybody should be treated equally.
Yeah. I have a fundamental problem with rewarding someone for doing the wrong thing. And what I hear you saying, and correct me if I misunderstood you, is that if someone has done the wrong thing by squatting on a piece of land that they're not supposed to be on, it's wrong. It doesn't look right that they are rewarded because they get preference. They get first treatment by central housing to get a piece of land or a free house or a reduced price house, just because it is convenient to remove them from where they're squatting. Whereas someone else who might equally need a place to live, because they are not an in-your-face inconvenience, because they're not squatting on a piece of land, they suddenly get relegated to second space. So the people who have done the wrong thing get priority for assistance. That's a problem. I agree. So here is what I think needs to be done in terms of a solution. First of all, we have to recognize that the government is not the entity to deal with this, because the government is there in Georgetown, and the government cannot be looking at every single neighborhood in the country. So priority has to be given to the NDCs. I live in LBI. The NDC here should be looking after squatting between BV going down to Better Hope. They don't. The reason they don't is because they don't have any money. The reason they don't have any money is because they can't raise rates so that they can get income to do their job. As a system, we were left with a good system by the British that we have allowed to go into rack and ruin. If the NDC could do its job, the NDC would have the money to see a problem happening when a dump site is created, because people start dumping rubbish in one location until you get a huge rubbish pile. When a road starts to go bad, or when people start to squat in an area and illegally take electricity and water. And they could nip it in the bud before it becomes a huge problem. And me, Jonas, living here in LBI, if I see something like that happening over my fence, because let's be honest, if you got premises that you are proud of and looking after, and you cut the grass and you keep your parapet nice and you plant trees outside for beauty, you do not want someone who is going to build something ramshackle next to you, who is going to bring in cows and goats and horses. You don't want that. And I should be able to go to my NDC and say, look, this man is building his house too close to my fence, or he's keeping pigs in his yard, and the NDC should stop it. None of that happens. And if the NDC was accountable to me, because we're a small community, so I know in 2 years if they don't look after me, voting them out, then they will be accountable to me and they will help me. And that same close personal relationship that I will have with the resident in LBI, who is the man in charge of the NDC, that same relationship will exist in Quarantine, it will exist in New Amsterdam, it will exist in Mara, it will exist in Springfield. In each small community, you want that kind of community relationship with direct accountability from the NDC to the residents. So when you got squatting starting in Success, you don't wait until it's 50 houses. The first 2 you see going up, somebody will say to the NDC, look what's going on, or the NDC will themselves see and put a stop to it. And if you can prevent problems before they start, you don't have the kind of crisis that we have going on now. As long as government refuses to empower the NDCs by allowing them to charge rates, NDCs will have no money. Nobody will want to work at the NDCs because they're not being paid. If they want to do anything, they got to go and beg the government. And if they're seen to be anti-government, they won't get any money. And we have a vicious cycle of incompetence, inefficiency, and apathy. So we got to empower NDCs. That will stop squatting. That will encourage clean parapets, good drains, clearing garbage. That's the only way to do it. And we got to take personal responsibility. So to that lady who is saying squatting is not illegal, sorry, I disagree. On the flip side, there needs to be a welfare scheme. Because when you look at some of these pictures, you got mothers with children who simply cannot afford better, who cannot look after their children, who cannot buy a place. And we need, our NIS system needs a scheme that those people can get a monthly subvention, a monthly income, so that they can look after their children and they are enabled and empowered to lift their children out of that situation. So we need a welfare scheme, but we also need that lady, for example, you know how many we see like that. 3 children, 4 children, 5 children. She can't do better. She needs help. And the NIS system, the welfare system, needs to be able to give her help so that she is put into a comfortable position. She is living in a house. She is empowered to send her children to school so that she can help her children do better. So you need both. You need a strict rule to empower NDCs. You need strict rules to stop the squatting, to allow our infrastructure to develop properly. But you also need a transparent and good welfare system to help the people that genuinely need it. What we have is ministers who give themselves free houses in Pradoville and build mansions and then give you crumbs. And that can't work.
All right, thank you so much for that. So now we'll move into our next topic for tonight, which will be crime. And I want to take a look at, can you guys hear me?
Yes, very well.
Okay. Yes, as I was saying, I want to take a look at this case where this woman was kidnapped. Her name is Tusha Domandio. She was kidnapped, and a few days after, she was found in her base with her head almost bare. Now, I'll ask Seven to play that video. The people who don't know, so that they can understand the story, and then we'll come back.
36-year-old Talisa Domandio was on Friday last found dead on a sheep farm in Iskanji, about 1 week after she was reportedly kidnapped at gunpoint from her mother's home at Blairmont. The woman's neck was almost severed. On April 14th, the housewife was allegedly abducted. The matter was reported to the Blairmont police station. Checks were made for her in both regions 5 and 6, but to no avail. Speaking with the Evening News, the now dead woman's mother, Gayatri Silo-chan, related why her daughter left her Crabwood Creek home to stay with her. The woman was married to her husband of 8 years, and she has 2 children for him. The woman also has a 3rd child for her ex-lover, Sunil Durga, who was also turned up dead.
She called me One day she tell me that how she was when she get the problem. So she said, Mommy, she never money. Sometimes she okay. That get one taxi. And she said, alright. Well, she come about 6 but 9:30 time, she come in night and I pay the car man $11,000 for bring her from Skillet. Yeah, on Friday, I think she go back. And she said she would come back the next morning. She didn't come back the morning. I called she phone, she didn't answer. She called Sunday morning, I called, she answer. She said, Mommy, I said, what wrong with you? You never come home? She said, yes, Mommy, I come. That made any problem. She come home, me ask you, what wrong? Me see he so the one big dentin and red. So me ask you, what wrong Pepe? She said, no, Mommy, say hickey. I said, next morning, me see this eye black and blue. So I said, no, this no look like that. It's like your legs. Then she said, yes, Mommy. Say how? But here tell him, ask him, give them 2 children. A shit, if a Gion, and she said, no, my Gion. And we just in alone. He pick up the cutlass and start broadside shit.
According to Silo Chan, on April 14th, a car pulled up outside of her home and 3 males exited and entered her yard.
They had 2 guns, 1 gun and 2 cutlass shots like this. So, and my mom, he run up to my daughter and take a duct tape and duct tape her mouth and duct tape her hand. And one run up with the gun from my son's neck. Tell him, walk in the kitchen. So he go in the kitchen.
The man demanded money and jewelry from her son. Meanwhile, one of the intruders, she said, took away her daughter's cellular phone and a gold chain she was wearing at the time worth $140,000.
Push she and say walk, so she take she hand and pull out the duct tape. She called the man's son in a name. Not really by name. And she said, why you carry me? I said, oh, by me, do I you nothing? They said, I don't want you. And walk with chain, put in the car. Really, so then take all 2 children to bring them by the road. So them children stand up by the road, then not see the father. So the grandson walk up to the car and say, Daddy, say, what you gonna do with Mommy? Tell the boy, so the grandson, when they pull up with the speed and shook she back, seat and all them by jumping and then gone right straight and then gone.
Meanwhile, the body of Durga was fished out of the Kanji River on Sunday morning.
It is a life, but I'm not glad for what happened, but he chose to do that. It's God's life and he take his own life. What we gonna do? Can't do nothing.
For the evening news, Andrew Carmichael.
Now, after this incident, we had another murder that occurred at the Alpha Hotel just last Tuesday. I'll ask Evan to play that video, then we'll come back to questions.
Dead is 36-year-old Talisha Demandio, a housewife formerly of Crabwood Creek Quarantine. The body was discovered at about 7 hours on Friday at Creek Dam, Betsy Ground Villages, Kanji Berbice, at a sheep farm about 55 miles. 36-year-old Talisha Demandio was on Friday last found dead on a sheep farm in Iskanji about 1 week after she was reportedly kidnapped at gunpoint.
I think that's the same program as Ramsaywack.
The woman's neck was almost severed.
Sorry, we're fixing that.
Had a good relationship. Sister and friend, she had a good relationship. Sister and friend, everything. And yesterday afternoon, time like now, she came by me because I had to make some cake for her, some black cake. So I did that, and then she come by me and she hug her and she tell me that she's gonna see me today. She's gonna come back today. And this where I get called to hear my sister die and the her husband do what he had to do, and that was it.
What you heard happened?
That they find her at a hotel where the murder go on, and this where I pick up myself and I came right here where it had happened, and that is what I see. Her body just lie down there with so much stab wound. Her neck is slit. So
what the relationship between your sister and her husband was like? They had problems?
Yes, they have on and on problem. on and on problem, and then she go and she say that she never did, so she moved out. And
how long ago she moved out?
Like I think the last month.
Do you have any idea how she might have ended up here with him?
No, nothing. Because she tell me that she's coming today, so I would see her today and looking out for her. Then my phone ring. I thought it was her. Not her. I hear that they find her body lie down and just.
When she told you that she was gonna leave, did she say if she confronted him about it and how he reacted?
No. She said she going, so she move out and she leave, and she tell me that my sister I ain't able to do no more, so I am leaving. Before it get worse, she leave. You understand? So.
But he ever hit her or so?
Not in front of me.
She ever tell you anything?
That he never did nothing in front of me. But she tell me that he used to hit her, but not in front of me. Never did nothing. I mean, he have a good relationship. Anything he can ask me for, the cook, clean, anything he want, I do it for him.
And to find out that he did something like this.
And somebody does start to you positive, you don't even know what can happen. Huh? Me can start to you really good today, and tomorrow you don't know I can trip. You understand me? So it's human we're dealing with, so you don't know what can happen.
What are you hoping to come out of the whole situation?
What everybody does want, justice, and everybody's want justice, and some people you just look forward for it and it don't happen. Sometimes you hear one time you hear, and then you hear everything just vanish. You understand? This is life. But I hope that we have it. We get justice out of what happened to my sister here today, and I wouldn't want it to happen to nobody else, because I'm fed up seeing it on the news. This woman died with woman stab wounds and chop, and so we're human body. We just walk away. If you can't walk away, deal with it somewhere else, or do something else.
Thank you, Devin. Now, those are the two recent murders that occurred, and both of these women were being abused. Well, they did try to start their lives over, but unfortunately, it ended with death. Now, honestly, I'm tired of seeing this happening. It's almost every week, especially in this country. And it's a very sad situation. Especially if it involves children. There's children that got a witness or hear, oh, mommy was killed in this manner, and and to hear it on the news, to see stuff like these. I mean, it can be very traumatic. Now, I know we've had discussions on this before. Now, I know that there are these hotlines and certain help that is out there, but at the same time, I believe that more awareness needs to be spread on what type of help is out there, so that women can seek these help, and of course these men as well. Because like the woman said, I could die, he could good, and you never know, I could tomorrow. So now, some of the things that what I want to ask, right? Like I said, there are some systems in place, but more awareness needs to be spread. What are some of the new measures the relevant authorities can implement to tackle this issue? Because I was researching today on trying to read up as much as I can on domestic violence, and I've noticed that even women who were a part of the Guyana police force were also brutally murdered by it's either their ex or partner. So what are some of the measures you think can be implemented to deal with this issue? New measures.
It's such a huge problem, isn't it? And I've never seen it as bad as in Guyana. I mean, maybe they got places like Afghanistan or somewhere where it's worse. But when I look around, we have a disease and a half going on in this country. So causes of domestic violence. Let's start with, it's a long litany, but let's start with the most obvious ones. We saw a woman earlier, not the domestic violence, there was a lady washing clothes out of a bucket. Now, if a woman is poor, if she doesn't have a job, if she's got children, and if she's depending on a man for income, however meager, however miserly that income is, she's a slave. She got to take what comes. Because if she walks away, she can't walk away with her children because she can't look after her children. If she walks away with her children, she has a serious problem. And what woman is going to walk away without her children? And if she doesn't have a job, where is she going to live? What's she going to do? Is she going to get a job? If she gets a job, who's going to look after the children? If the children are young, because domestic violence is women in the 20s and 30s for the most part, it's not when the men old at 60 and 70. So when you got young children, can you be at work? Who looks after your young children when you're at work? So how do you solve these problems? First, and I've said it before, I said it just now on this program, our national insurance scheme that working people contribute to,
that in both
employers contribute to, that employees contribute to,
speaking with the evening
should
news,
also
now
receive
dead woman's
contributions
mother,
from the
Guy
government,
Tracey Chan, related why her
so
daughter
that
left her Crabwood home to stay.
Have an income, that they are assured economic independence, so that if they choose to, they can walk away. They can find some housing, they can find some income, they get the wherewithal from NIS, unemployment benefits, maternity benefits, that they have a choice. That's the first thing. If you don't have a choice, you're a slave, and slaves get licks. So we need to fix our NIS so that mothers and unemployed people have that economic dignity that they can walk away. Now, that won't always solve the problem, because you heard that mother in the interview who paid for her daughter to leave the home of her husband and come to the mother's home. And the husband came and kidnapped her. So that was a woman who had the luxury of being able to go by mommy, to go by family. She had an intact family unit. And she chose that, and that still didn't help. So the economic independence, the economic dignity is not the cure-all to fix everything. The second question you gotta ask is, why is it normalized? Why is it normal, this disease that we have? Do you see how calmly that lady described something that is so appalling, that people armed with cutlasses and a gun went into her yard, tied her daughter up with tape, put tape duct around her daughter's mouth, took her out of the yard into a car while they restrained the brother with a gun. All of this lady talking about. And this lady calmly recounts this thing as if it's not the most astonishing, horrifying thing that's happened to her in her life. And the reason for that is you see this every day in Guyana. Where else do you see this thing recounted so calmly? So why are Guyanese violent? Because we're violent. We are a brutish, violent society when we get ready. And I have a view why, I have a theory why. And a lot of people won't like the theory. We're violent because we learned that from slavery, and we learned that from indentureship. When you have a system that's unfair, the only way to enforce that system is with brutality. So when the slaves run away, you cut his hamstring. Run away a second time, you cut off a hand. When you have a slave revolt, you burn them alive. Because you can't persuade these people that it is in their interest to remain in slavery. So the only way to get them to do what you want them to do is by terror, is by brute force and by terror. And that's our culture. And we haven't changed that culture in the last 150 years. We have not changed that culture in the last 150 years. So we have children and we brutalize our children. And then we express surprise when those children beat teachers and teachers beat children and parents go to beat teachers in the school and the teachers some video I saw the other day, a teacher with a cutlass going against a parent. And then some fool says, oh, not to worry, they're reconciled, when both of them should be in jail. And we see that, and tomorrow we wake up and continue with our lives like nothing's happened. And we don't understand that that culture of violence, of unreasoning, unreasoned, ignorant, blind violence is what we teach our children before they get to school, what the teachers teach the children in school, what the exchanges between adults, from how we drive on the road to how we interact in the workplace, to the abuse that happens in the workplace and the abuse that happens at home. That's what we learn is the norm. So strong can beat the weak, strong can take advantage of the weak, and nobody does a thing about it. And then we say we're tired of seeing this, and I agree with you. But it got to start at home with the family unit, respect for the family, economic independence, and it can't be the norm. If you see somebody doing that, it needs to be reported to the police. The police need to be trained that that is a priority. It got to stop. If you know your neighbor beats his wife, you should shun your neighbor. You shouldn't even acknowledge him on the road. It needs to be brought home to people forcefully that this is not acceptable. I'm not going to turn a blind eye and shake your hand and wish you good morning when I know that you're that kind of human being. And if we can get rid of this cancer in the society, gradually, we will see that people can have more dignity and we will learn to resolve differences better. But it starts with how we raise our children and how we interact at that level. Do you think, Ms.
Thank you for
Ramsaywack,
sharing your views. Because recently,
do you think that money has anything to do with it?
if money has anything to do with it,
Yeah. Do you think that this is more prevalent in one financial sector, less in another sector? Do you think it's more prevalent in an uneducated environment or in an educated environment? Do you think that those are factors that affect things in Ghana?
I think it's more prevalent in the uneducated section. So, and at the same time, money as well too, because there was this incident recently that I came across. Well, somebody that I know, and she was in an abusive relationship. Now she reached out to her mom. This is her mom for help. Told her everything was happening, and told her that she started to want to leave. Now, the mother is to try and tell her that, people can say this and people can say that, and it will look bad because recently get married and you only got one child and you're too young for this and everything that people can judge it. Well, she's basically saying that people can judge her and gossip about it. So, but what I noticed that the mother isn't realizing is that she had also experienced those problems. She stayed in her relationship, and I don't know what's her reason for encouraging to stay, but when I thought that, I was like, man, you see, it's we just encourage these things to happen. Because, I mean, if we don't, I believe actions have everything to do with what's happening. Our actions have everything to do with what is happening around us. Because if I didn't sit down and take this from my man and my daughter didn't see that, she see I ain't doing nothing about it, and I acting like it's okay, right? I believe she can grow up to do the same, accept the same treatment. So there is one, right? And then as a mother too, encouraging the daughter on the other hand to stay in a toxic relationship where that's just getting beat all the time. And the guys being unfaithful and those kind of things. I mean, it's like I don't know how to feel about it. It's a sad situation. Like I don't know how to feel about it. But I believe too that it is our actions that have that cause these things to happen. Because I'm sure you saw the news of Sir Morris that circulated on social media. since Sunday or early Monday morning, right? And after that, after the news broke, there are some recordings that are circulating, two recordings, right? One with an eyewitness stating what he saw happen, and another one where Sir Mars is saying, okay, he got his guy used to put stuff at his neck. This is when he was alive, and then he can kill back the person because the person is threatening, according to what he's saying, to kill him. Now he know that would have happened. Well, he heard this. He did nothing. He didn't act on it, and it so happened that he ended up dead on Sunday night, murdered. So I believe if people just encourage these things to happen, and then again, we don't have a strong system. We can't go to the police to help us. We can't go anywhere where we could say, okay, we could go to this place or that place, get help and protection at the same time. So it's everything to do with us. It's more of us than money, I believe.
I agree. I think it transcends money and class. I mean, you got rich men beating their wives. I'm sure you remember that horrendous video of the man who was assaulting his daughter. Thankfully, he's in jail, I believe. And these were prominent, well-to-do people. So it transcends that. I think it also transcends education, although I think to a lesser degree. I think that more educated folk are less likely toward violence, possibly because they have the exposure and recognize, first of all, the pitfalls and nothing is solved, but also that they can talk their way out of situations and try to resolve things by discussion rather than by violence. But we are not chivalrous. As a society, we do not look after the people weaker than we are. And I think that probably the best export of British civilization that we should have kept is that concept of chivalry, that you help people who are weaker than you are, whether or not you know them. And we don't have that. And it's something that needs to be inculcated in our children. And the only way to do it is by how we treat our children and the example we set for them, as you say.
All right, thank you. So let me see if I can. I also saw, right, in relation to Sir Mars, that where an interview was with a woman who was suggesting that we have a few sessions on anger management and conflict resolutions and on all these different things that could possibly help somebody to not choose the path that they choose when they decide that, oh, I'm going to pick up this knife or cutlass and kill this woman or kill this man. Do you believe that those things, if those things are being done by the, I don't know what system they could set up, but do you believe if awareness is being spread more on these issues and people are getting help, like any like you just go around the community, do some community work and like house to house, I don't know, house to house, I assume these things will work like house to house or something in different communities on different days and weeks, where you would basically like give people this training or talk to them, counsel them, ask them if there's an issue, if there's anything they're thinking about, and like encourage them and train them in certain things, and would that help? I don't know, but do you think that would help also? Because I saw somebody was suggesting that can also be done, and hopefully it would help the situation.
You got two kinds of these crimes happen in two ways. The first is a crime of passion, and that tends to be more among the working class, the less educated, the people who are inclined to abuse alcohol and have the frustrations of not being able to provide properly for their family, living in poor circumstances. So something triggers you, and you have a crime of passion, and before you catch yourself, you've killed somebody. Now, I don't see any kind of awareness or speechifying or well-intentioned people walking around with pamphlets fixing that. I'm sorry, that's not going to work. The only way to fix that is to help lift people out of poverty, help educate people. The current generation might be lost, but provide better school and better education for the next generation and give the current generation the financial wherewithal to send the children to school. The second crime is the crime that we saw, which is premeditated. It's not a crime of passion, where a group of people went into the yard having thought about what they were going to do, having armed themselves, having agreed that they're meeting at 8 o'clock to jump in this car and go to this girl's house. Planned that these people are the people home who have to be restrained. Sorted out the children and told them to be quiet. That's premeditated. That's not a crime of passion. That's somebody who knew what he was doing from the beginning and brought in conspirators to help him. Now, you can't go and give him a pamphlet and help him out. He don't care. He does not care. But his comfort is in the knowledge that our police force is incompetent. So he thinks he can get away with it. So when you hear the Venezuelan lady killed in the mining camp, they think they can get away with it because they have confidence the police don't have the skills to catch them. He thinks he can bribe his way out or trick his way out or scheme his way out. So it's not a crime of passion. This is the plan of an evil man who thinks he can get away with it. He might think he can get out of the country. Who knows? In both of those cases, I don't think that somebody handing out pamphlets trying to spread awareness is going to help. I think that the problems run deeper and the solutions have to start earlier. We need to keep our family units intact. We need to give people financial wherewithal so that they have dignity. We need to be strict about how we treat our children and how we bring up our children. We cannot bring our children up violently because if they learn violence, they keep violence. You know, I've seen in communities, in broken communities, mothers, and they got some Guyanese women that are hard, I'm sorry to say it, beat their children, brutalize their children. And you know when it stops? It stops when that child is physically big enough that they can't do it anymore. So it doesn't stop because of a principled position or because the child has learned or because the child is no longer doing something that they don't like. The child continues to do something they don't like. But suddenly the child is physically as big as them and the violence stops. Now, if that is the reason that violence stops, then you're wrong in the first place. You are already condemned and you have already condemned that child because your relationship with that child is now one of violence and not one that he or she has learned anything from you except violence and has learned from you that the only response to violence has to be more violence. And here we have Guyana, the mud dam that we're all struggling on. We got to stop the violence at the level of the children.
Thank you, Ms. Jonas. I notice it's 9. So I would like to ask, do you have any closing comments before we wrap up the program? Would you like to say something to the viewers?
Well, I enjoy chatting with you, Ms. Ramsaywack, and I hope you don't mind that I threw some questions back at you because I know you have quite strong views on some of those issues.
That's fine.
I hope that the next time, I think it was Tracey was supposed to be here, right?
Yes, unfortunately, she couldn't be here.
Yeah, I think we need another sounding board, and I also think that we need people to try to defend the political systems that we're in, because I would like to see, the last time we had Clement Rohi here, I would like to see someone who is willing to defend the housing scheme, to defend the way that squatters are treated. You see, going back to that squatting situation, I'm sure you'll remember that when the squatters were removed from the penitence, from that canal in the penitence, the government was accused of racism, that these squatters were Afro-Guyanese and the government's moving them and doesn't care about them and that kind of thing. And that needs to be explored because every time you have a policy that's adopted, you have that fallback where we forget the principle, we forget the underlying reason, we forget that squatting is a problem, and suddenly politics turns into this ethnic tug-of-war that has destroyed us for so long. And I think we need to force our politicians to confront that. And unfortunately, you and me talking here can't do it because I think we have the same point of view where that's concerned. But we need some representatives ethnic parties to come to justify what's
I
going on.
understand. I understand, but hopefully somebody out there is listening and taking notes. Okay, so thank you so much for that. I would like to thank you myself on behalf of Mr. Nuhar and Devin, us here at Globespan, for always being willing to come on board to be a part of the discussion with us. Thank you very much.
It's always a
I would
pleasure.
also
And
like to thank.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead. You can go ahead.
I wanted to say that I appreciate how you are growing into the job and taking control of your forum. And I really hope that we see more of you in Globespan.
Thank you. I'm still learning. All right. Well, thank you so much. It really means a lot to me. Although I'm still learning, and I had a nervous breakdown earlier. I'm still here, still trying.
We're all
Thank
learning.
you.
Right, on real
Yes.
talk. Bye-bye.
Yes. Now, before we, and I would like to thank Mr. Nuhar Singh for making this program possible, and our technical operator, Devin Bisoon. Thank you once again, Mr. Jonas, and everybody do take care until next time.